Hey guys, this is Ken McElroy, and you are listening to the Mailbox Money Show with Bronson Hill.
Hey guys, welcome to the Mailbox Money Show. I'm super excited. This is Bronson Hill. I'm excited for this interview because this is my personal obstacle course race trainer. You might say, like, why in the world would you ever do an obstacle course race? Well, there's a huge mindset piece in this. There's a huge growth aspect into this. And a lot of you don't know this. 5-6 years ago, I actually lost 30 pounds. And I've kept it off. And it's by having personal goals in the areas of fitness and other areas as well. And so I found that as you have growth in one area and as you have a breakthrough in one area, you can bring that to another area. So for me, if you're someone who's facing a major obstacle in your life, whether it's your physical fitness, or it could be at work, or it could be at home, a relationship, all this stuff transfers over, because a lot of times the stuff that I'm doing now, I really felt was impossible before I did it. And that's kind of how it really works. So I'm gonna bring in my trainer for you, Jono Blodgett. I'm super excited for this interview. I hope you enjoy it. He's awesome. All right, welcome to the Mailbox Money Show. I've got an awesome guest here. I've got my trainer. For some of you know, I do Spartan races, or obstacle course races, and it's really helped me to level up my life in a way that, you see something that feels impossible, or I could never be that guy running those races, doing that up mountains, in the wild, all these crazy things. But my good friend now, Jono Blodgett, is here, and he is a 3-time world Spartan champion for the age group division. And I've just learned so much from him about how to have an unstoppable mindset, that whether you are an obstacle racer or not, or you just want to be unstoppable in life, he's got some incredible things to share. He's also got an awesome course out there where he talks about having a mindset where you can just overcome anything. So, Jono, welcome. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on, Bronson. Appreciate it. Always good to see you.
It's always good to see you, man. It's been fun spending time with you. And there's things that I've learned from you, man, just about, I don't know, just so many things about racing and life and breathing. I mean, I'm doing like running down the street while holding my breath and hoping I don't pass out, and all
Yeah.
these things to try to grow my abilities. But why don't you give our listeners that are unfamiliar with you? I know a lot of people, you probably knew a lot of folks listening, but tell us a little bit of your background. And I know we also share our backgrounds are medical device sales. So it's kind of one way we connected as well, is that we both have that background. And just give us a little bit of your background, both in career as well as the obstacle course racing.
Yeah. Grew up in Hawaii, just always out on the mountains, trail running and being in the ocean and things like that. I mean, so love the outdoors aspect, which Hawaii definitely promotes. And that was kind of pushed me into actually marine biology, was where I originally started my education, and venturing into that career, and hit a few roadblocks in there that we can kind of discuss. And then this opportunity came about for medical device sales, and I'd already been doing personal training and had started my own business, so I had the anatomy background. And I mean, as you know, with sales, you do need to constantly push and try and improve and get new customers and clients. So it was kind of very similar to the aspect of the health wise too. It's just always trying to improve and better yourself. And so that's why I really took to the medical device sales world as well. And it's all about relationships and things. And so just kind of came naturally to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I look back on my days in medical sales. A lot of people don't maybe realize I was 10 years in medical device sales, and I learned a lot of great skills. I think that's something it's super, valuable to come up with challenges and go into places where, they're selling products and you're going to try to sell them stuff, right? Or they're selling services and you're trying to sell them stuff. And it can feel a little awkward sometimes. You're like sneaking around a hospital or a doctor's office, and it can feel kind of weird. But talk to us a little bit about kind of that, where you particularly with the physical training, you went from like, okay, feels comfortable, because obviously you're hanging out in the ocean, you're a marine biologist, you maybe go on hikes and you go for a run. And then what was the point where you decided to just like, I'm going to become like an obstacle course race guy, and I'm just going to like commit to this and just give it 100%?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of came about all at the same time that I was getting into the personal training and just doing a lot of research and learning about all the nutrition aspects and how to train the body to perform better and be more efficient. and kind of one thing led to another. You start to experiment with a different tactic, like, okay, let's try this with my nutrition, and then you start to feel a little better. You like get some wins and start to feel that success, that progress start to be made, and they're like, okay, well, I've dialed that in a little bit, so now let's try and work on some different mechanics or something along those lines. And you start to start to see some wins on that, and then it just kind of snowballs one thing into another. And then once you start to feel that little bit of progress, you're like, okay, well, this is my new baseline of where I'm at, right? So you remember what you used to be, and then you kind of start to want to kind of continue to build upon that and grow. So yeah, it's all about just kind of continuing the progress as much as possible.
I love that. That really is as a growth mindset, right? And it reminds me, my dad,
Exactly.
he teaches physical education, and he's worked with a lot of athletes. And he would say that, there's this thing called a performance plateau, right? Where people are working really hard and they're not seeing any improvement, but yet they're still learning and they're growing and whatever. And all of a sudden they take a bump up to go to the next level. How have you felt kind of your, the transfer over from physical training and having success in that area has transferred over into your career and your personal life? Have you seen some carryovers from, like, I've done hard things over here and it's helped me in these other areas of my life?
100%. I mean, you kind of going back to what you were saying, like hitting that plateau and that growth mindset. I mean, I remember my previous job, like as doing marine biology, I'd worked my way up to the program leader for the entire state of Hawaii, and I was just kind of going through day by day doing my job, but I didn't have that growth mindset at that point, and I was just kind of enjoying life. And I remember we lost our contract, and so we got laid off, and I was just thinking, okay, they'll rehire me, no problem. And they ended up hiring the guy that was below me, and that really kind of woke me up as far as like, okay, you have to be able to continuing to have that growth mindset on like ways you can continue to improve, and that really like kind of kickstarted me saying like, okay, you can't just go through life living that Groundhog Day over and over and just go through the motions. You need to continuing to kind of look at yourself and say, okay, where am I successful? Yeah, what got me to be that at that point, and what areas do I need to improve upon? And same thing with the physical side. Is you start to, and as with obstacle racing, it brings out all your little weaknesses here and there. So you just start to kind of like, okay, what could I have done a little bit better for that event, and how can I improve on it, and take on that growth mindset instead of just saying like, oh, I'm never going to be as good as that guy kind of thing, and just give up and not try and get yourself to be better. Like, okay, yeah, look at that aspect and say like, okay, well, he's training this way, or what do I need to do? And so all that just then carries over into how you're living your everyday life and your career, and pushing yourself to be better in all aspects of life.
Yeah, there's a saying that how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I've come and counted. So if you're kind of sloppy and you kind of just, show up late to everything, that's kind of how you're going to show up in your life and your relationships at work, and your personal, and your fitness. But when you do the hard things, I think you recommended this book, Jono, called Dopamine Nation. And it's basically saying we're so entertained, and we're so like, we try to seek all these feel good emotions, and we're on Snapchat and Facebook and all the time, to where we don't do any hard things. And so the whole thing of like going and doing a 10-mile run, or going and doing a cold plunge, like I know you cold plunge as well as I do. And it's like, when you do the hard thing first, everything else is easy. And that's why people are like, why do you do a cold plunge? Why do you cold plunge almost every day? I was like, well, I do it because that's likely the hardest thing I'm going to do every day, each day. And then everything else is easier after that. Right. And so I also want you to talk about that. I want you to also talk about your course, because you talk about this in the course that you created about doing the hard thing and overcoming fear, and even how breath like leads into that. Maybe you can talk about some of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like what you said. I mean, when when you're going into, say, talking to a surgeon or something, or having a difficult conversation with your boss, or if you're needing to put on a big presentation in front of a bunch of people, public speaking is, people fear that more than anything, right?
More than death.
So yeah, exactly. But if you are doing kind of consistently hard things on a regular basis, then I talk about this in my course. Your baseline of what's difficult gets moved up a little bit each time. Right. So if you're start off doing a cold shower, and that's pretty intense for you, then slowly start to build that up. But then once you get used to the cold shower, you can then move up to something more difficult like an ice bath. But it's that same concept in success in career, like going to talk to that difficult surgeon. And if you understand how to control the body and the mind in one difficult situation, it will carry over into other situations as well. Because, like, okay, I did a 5-minute ice bath. Like, I can go and talk to a person, no problem. It's just a different kind of fear, but then it
Yeah.
it all carries over.
That's so
So
true. No, it really is true. And I think, one thing we, do, one thing I'm really passionate about is not just having more money. Obviously, this show is the Mailbox Money Show about creating more wealth, but it's also about creating a better quality of life. And that's one thing I learned in the medical field is a lot of people that, were on the operating table at 50 or 60, kind of in rough shape because they had diabetes, they were overweight, they had other health issues that were
yeah,
preventable, that they could have made different choices. So the idea of having a growth mindset. I mean, there was somebody, I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson, I think, said the first wealth is health. And so if you don't have your health, I mean, if you could live another 20 years or 25 years and have those be higher quality of life and have better mobility, I mean, how awesome is that? And of course, the impact you get to have on your friends and family and in the world is really great. What's one or two things that you think most people should know? I mean, this is a very general question. You can go any way you want with it, but what are one or two things you think people should know about health and maybe things that they should consider start doing or stop doing?
I think definitely start doing is, we in our society, we're all about, grind, doing it as much as you can. Like, that's how you become successful. I mean, and that definitely is to a certain extent. But one thing I've learned as far as training and health is, you can wear yourself out, you can wear your body out a lot, right? And then if you get to a certain point, your body's going to crash, you're going to get burnt out. And same thing in a career. If you're grinding, all the time, and never giving yourself that little bit of downtime or recovery, and like going out and fishing, or playing golf, and getting that downtime, then you will eventually burn out. So I mean, with health and recovery, people nowadays, their sleep is so deprived. They're just eating terrible food, and stress. And so if you're not sleeping right, you're not eating right, you're just overworked and overstressed, that's going to then affect your performance in, as far as your health wise, and then also as far as your career. You're not going to show up to work the next day feeling like a rock star, and want to go out and maybe have that difficult conversation, or try and do something a little bit more risky, because your willpower is going to be at the floor level, right? If you're like,
That's
oh,
true.
I'm tired today, I'm not feeling it, I'll try and do it tomorrow. And then you do the same thing, you're not sleeping, and that tomorrow
Yeah,
comes, and then before you know it, it's been 5 years and you're still stuck in the same place you were. So
yeah.
I think, yeah, that's one big aspect.
Yeah, well, I have one more too. I want to share one thing on that. So there was a study that came out, and we think we're totally unbiased and we can make great choices all the time. But like even something as simple as like us being hungry, like they actually did the study and they found these Israeli judges, they had these parole judges that went around, and it was when it was right before, like it was first thing in the day, there was like maybe a 30% chance, 40% chance somebody would be able to be paroled. Well, right before lunch, like 11:55 or 11:30, whatever, there was like almost a 0% chance someone's going to be like, I think this like
Oh
for
yeah.
dozens and dozens of, and the same thing happened in the
Yeah.
afternoon before break, but it was just like, but we get so like, if we're tired, if we're hungry, if whatever, we can just get to a place where we don't realize we're not making as good of choices as we should. But that's where, you know, us investing in sleep, us investing in our health. And that's, like you said, where willpower comes from, is us being rested. And even fitness is like I tell my daughter this, she's 8, she's like, oh, I went to soccer practice. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Well, if you run more, you'll be tired, but you're actually going to develop more stamina, right? So it's like short run,
Yep.
maybe a little more
Yep.
tired, but long run, you're going to feel great, you know?
It's, yeah, people don't think it's counterintuitive, but you work out and you get more energy, you're going to create more endorphins, and then you want to have you're more inspired to go out and do other things that are difficult, but you want to be successful at. So
Yeah.
it's all related. And that was one of the biggest aspects and when I learned, when I back at that marine biology, I was still partying a bunch and not taking care of my health. And then as I started to change my ways, then I was like, okay, well, I'm feeling a lot better. I want to be successful in this aspect of my life. So what do I need to do to make that happen? And so you
Yeah.
just start to look at it a little bit differently. And there's one of the other modules in the course I talk about, like, kind of effort times skill is what equals success, right? So a lot of people have a lot of skill, whether it be an athlete or anything like that, or maybe somebody's just better at talking. But if they're not putting in the effort to go along with it, the skill is only going to go so far in order to be successful, right? I mean, you can have somebody who's a successful basketball player, but then if they're just still going home and watching TV or something, but then you look at Kobe, who he was had the skill, and then he put in tons of extra hours at the gym, and that's what really catapulted him from just being a good player to being an amazing player, right? And so same kinds of things with your health, with your success in business. It's how much effort you put in will actually carry over a lot more to if you get that successful or not.
So I got to brag on you a little bit, Jono. We got to a race together in the spring at Big Bear, California, which is, you know, elevation of, you know, 7,000 to 8,000 feet. And you get out there, of course, you know, I saw you for the first like quarter mile and then you're gone, but you know, I knew you were there and you finished like way ahead of me. But I mean, you're super disciplined. I think I was asking you, hey, do you ever have any alcohol? You're like, no, I don't. Do you ever, I mean, you just only, I mean, I get the sense of you, like, you only eat good stuff. You're out there training, you know, almost every day. And it shows, you know, you're so consistent with it. How do you stay? And I think I asked you this one time. I think it was that race. I was like a few weeks out. I was like, man, how do you stay motivated on this? I know you do a lot of races, which keeps you motivated and stuff, but how do you keep yourself like fired up? Do you have a morning routine, or do you like look at yourself in the mirror and say, you're awesome, you're going to do it? Like, what do you do to keep yourself fired up? You know?
I mean, I'll admit I'm human, just like everybody else. There's still those days where you get up and you're like, man, I'm not feeling it today. But like you said, it is all about consistency, and so it's just kind of taking on the mindset of like, okay, maybe I'm not feeling that I'm going to go out and do a 10-mile run, but I am going to just still get up and do something that will help improve my mindset, improve my body, or if you're as far as career wise, like, what's still something I can get out and do to make me like 1% growth better, right? It may not be you did that big workout, or you went and talked and got that big client, but if you made one little step towards that, then you can build upon that on the next day, right? So it's just constantly staying consistent. And a lot of times, if I'm not feeling like I'm going for a big run, I'll just get up and at least go sit in the sauna, or do some mobility work, or even just go in for a walk, or it's just still staying consistent as much as possible. And that's what, over time, you'll see that bigger growth.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, I wanted to share. I think you're bringing a lot of great things into life, but I don't know if I really did a great job in the beginning of explaining kind of what, if those aren't familiar with Spartan or obstacle course racing. I mean, this is where, you're running between, usually between 6 and 13 miles or more, and you're climbing things, you're carrying 70 pounds up a hill, you're running the whole time while running and trying to, like, it's a really intense thing. And the one thing that appealed to me about it is it's not just a running race where you end up being rail thin and you're like these marathon runners that are super thin. You
Yeah.
actually have to have some strength because you got to be able to flip a tire. You got to be able to carry something really heavy. You got to be able to do all this. So it builds kind of that stuff around you. But and when it comes to, I think of obstacle course racing, we do face obstacles not only in racing, but also in life. But what's a big obstacle you faced personally and that you've had to overcome? And it can be in any area of life. I was just thinking it'd be cool for you if you had anything you wanted to share. And I don't need to put you on the spot with that, but I was just thinking if there's anything that you've had to work through that could be helpful for people.
I think it is just the mindset of getting over losses and being, we're all going to have those defeats where you just get run down and you want to give up, but it's kind of using that more as like a stepping stool, a learning process, and kind of going back to that when that other guy, the guy below me, actually took my job and got hired. I mean,
Yeah,
I definitely I could have kind of just given up and thrown it in and just said, oh well, I'm just gonna go and do some job that doesn't bring me any satisfaction or worthwhile. But it's kind of picking yourself up out of that hole and learning, like, okay, this was a little negative spot in my life, but what do I need to do to get better and improve? And so I think that's definitely a lot of the downfall. I mean, mental health is kind of on a lot of people's minds nowadays, and it's the stress and it's affecting people a lot more. So when people do hit those losses, I think it's a lot more. It takes a lot more for people to get themselves out of that hole. But it's just kind of learning, like, and that's where the health comes back into it. Because if you're in a difficult situation with the career or family, going for a run or doing a little workout, getting outside can really help boost your mental health, and kick up those endorphins and dopamine and help you kind of pick yourself up and be like, all right, that was a shitty situation, but I'm gonna get out of it and gonna make myself better.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. It's amazing how success in one area of life can transfer over the others. And even if nothing's going well, you can always get out and go for a run or at least do something active. Hopefully, as long as you're mobile, to be able to try to be active. What's one? Do you have a book recommendation or resource that you recommend for folks that are just interested? In a minute we'll talk about your course, but just anything else that you're like, I read this book recently, or here's this thing I came across that I just found it super helpful when it comes to mindset.
I think any autobiography books is what I'm a big proponent of, is because you can see and hear from these people that are very successful. I mean, kind of look at Arnold Schwarzenegger or David Goggins or
Goggins, yeah.
Ronda Rousey, MMA fighter, female fighter. She's got her autobiography, which is one of my favorites. But a lot of times we only see these people when they're at their peak and they're very successful. But when you read these autobiographies, you see that, like, these people went through a lot of hardships, and they went through a lot of low points in their life, and how you can pick yourself up, and a lot of that, it relates to everybody. We're all going to be at that low spot, like I said, but you can see, like, okay, these people were able to do it. And so those are the books that I recommend a lot. I mean, yeah, Ronda Rousey's book is a good one. David Goggins, both of his books are good. So I try to kind of stick to those guys.
Yeah, I listened to Ronda Rousey's, and then I think when I wasn't motivated, 6 months ago, you're like, oh, listen to David Goggins, and that guy's like, if anybody's not familiar with David Goggins, is a guy who was a former Navy SEAL, and just like, oh, my legs were falling apart, and blood was, ran another 100 miles, and it's just crazy. Like some of it feels a little masochistic.
Yeah.
But it's like if he can do that, surely I can get out and run a few miles and do what I'm going to do, right? Like it's very encouraging. And
and he's definitely an extreme next level, but it just one of the things he says is, we're all just operating at 40%. And it really is true. People will think, there's no way I could go out and do a Spartan race, but hey, I see these people all the time that are overweight. They might be an amputee and only have one leg, and maybe they walk the entire course, but hey, they still did it. Right. So all these, it's learning by doing those hard things and pushing your limits. You then think like, okay, I am capable of doing a whole lot more than I'm giving myself credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jono, I appreciate you for obviously being my coach and helping me to, just push my limits and get better. And I actually placed, it wasn't a Spartan race, it was a Savage race, but to get top 3 in the 40 and over. So I'm hoping to have more podium finishes. And I just really,
it's been a great honor to kind of seeing your progress as well, and just seeing how far that you've been able to grow and push yourself and just, love seeing it. Keep it going.
Thanks, man. Well, there's a good coach. He's always being encouraging when you're doing stuff that's right. And so it's good to have positive voices in your life. Well, John, I appreciate you being with us today. Talk about your course and talk about how people can follow what you're doing.
Yeah. Malcolm Mackay Fitness. I know for those people that aren't in Hawaii, I'm sure you'll probably put it in the show notes. Very difficult to spell.
Sure.
But she's got the nice masterclass program where I talk all about breathing and the mindset and how to build more mental strength in athletic and your personal life, and overcoming fears and anxieties. And like I said, we all have different fears and anxieties, but it's all kind of how you look at it and how you kind of base your life around that. But breathing, why I threw that in there is just because we're all breathing, right? But you can use your breathing for different aspects, and people don't think about that, like going into an athletic endeavor or going into a big time meeting where your heart rate might be racing a little bit, like you have a little bit of anxiety. You can actually use your breathing to help calm yourself down and bring yourself into a more kind of focused and alert state. But then like sleep, a lot of times people are breathing right while they're sleeping, and then that then carries over to, all right, I'm waking up the next day tired because I didn't sleep well, and then it's just one big cycle over and over, right? Going back to you're not going to perform as well at your job and at your career. So definitely check me out at that website, or you can find me on Instagram at Jono Blodgett. And definitely thanks for having me on. Always good to talk to you.
Hey, thanks so much, John. I appreciate you, brother. All right. Well, I'm a huge Jono Blodgett fan. I hope you enjoyed this interview. It was awesome. I love how mindset really is everything. And I love what Jono said about autobiographies, right? When someone who's uber successful says, this is how I did it, or this is what I did, or these are the challenges that I overcame, I think there's something that's huge about being someone who overcomes, right? I think there's even a spiritual principle there. The idea of being someone who overcomes adversity, overcomes challenges. And I've had lots of adversity and challenges that I've overcome, and I'm sure you have as well. But any way you can find that you can do it in different areas of life. And just as that saying on the interview we talked about, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? If you show up late and you're sloppy and you keep your room messy, you don't make your bed, your things, whatever, that's probably kind of generally how you're going to approach things at work. That's how you're going to approach things in relationships. It's going to be kind of a sloppy, haphazardous, not real intentional type of thing. But if you're intentional and you're focused and you have goals and you kind of follow through and you actually take time to plan, that's going to show up in every area of your life. So I encourage you to, if you haven't, it doesn't have to be a cold plunge, though I love cold plunging. I'll probably get cold plunge later this afternoon. But whatever the hard thing is, do the hard thing. Eat the frog first, right? Do the hard thing, and everything else gets easier, right? If you do the hard thing first. But anyway, really love this interview. If you liked it, go ahead and share it around. Reach out to Jono. He's awesome. He's a great trainer. And again, we do this virtually. So I train with him. He gives me kind of a training schedule, and it was super successful for me. So super grateful, but hopefully this will translate for you in greater breakthroughs and in your mindset as well as in your life. So thanks for taking the time to educate yourself. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Mailbox Money Show.
You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.